He hears his brother scream his name twice, then gunfire, then absolute nothingness. And you know what? He doesn't turn the canoe around. He left his own brother to die. I mean, let that sink in for a second. This isn't just some abstract concept. This is a gut-wrenching, true-to-life reaction that a real character had in one of the most quietly devastating short stories ever written. Today's explainer takes us straight into the dark heart of Joseph Conrad's 1897 masterpiece, The Lagoon. But listen, we're not just reading the story today. We're breaking down a brilliant strategic blueprint from the Guilt Files that shows us exactly how to adapt a dense 19th century text into a narrative that totally grips audiences today. So, what does it cost a man to save the woman he loves? Does it cost him his own blood? Let's really dive into this, because this right here is the exact emotional hook we need to get anyone invested in this story. We're about to see how a really strategic scriptwriter takes heavy, classic literature and turns it into a high-retention, dual-layered narrative. A narrative approach designed for literally all kinds of audiences, from casual viewers to hardcore students. Section 1. Reframing classic literature. Selling psychological horror, not homework. Look, if you want to explain classic literature today, you absolutely cannot present it as some dry, academic exercise. You've got to reframe the whole thing. On one hand, you have your standard, frankly boring English lit approach. You know the one, it starts with, Joseph Conrad was born in 1857, and instantly, boom, the audience feels like they're trapped back in high school. But on the other hand, we have the Guilt Files approach. This brilliantly bypasses that whole homework stigma entirely by treating the story as a devastating portrait of human psychology. We are selling a high-stakes emotional thriller here, not a pop quiz. And the absolute engine driving this entire narrative approach? It's survivor's guilt. By focusing purely on the agonizing guilt of a survivor, someone who literally let another person die in their place, we instantly bridge the gap between a modern audience and a classic 19th century character. It's universally understood, and wow, it is incredibly dark. Section 2. The Stillness of the Lagoon, Entering the Dark Mist. Okay, so let's get right into the story itself, using Joseph Conrad's incredibly thick, atmospheric prose to establish our present-day setting. We start with a character known simply as Tuan, which, by the way, is just a respectful Malay title for a white European trader, basically meaning sir. So Tuan is paddling upriver through the gorgeous but seriously oppressive Malay archipelago. He's on his way to visit an old friend named Arsat, planning to just crash at Arsat's clearing for the night. Now, to really feel this setting, listen to how Conrad describes it. Bewitched into an immobility perfect and final. It's beautiful, right? The original text paints this picture of a jungle that is utterly, completely motionless. It's this breathless, heavy, suffocating silence. We need to establish this perfect stillness right now to act as a massive contrast to the frantic, kinetic action that's going to hit us later. But here is where the tension just spikes. When Tuan finally arrives, his local crew absolutely refuses to step ashore. I mean, they won't even leave the boat. Why? Because they genuinely believe Arsat's hut is haunted. They think he deliberately lives out there in the lagoon surrounded by ghosts. This is our first major clue that something is very, very wrong. So Tuan goes inside the hut all by himself, and the tragic reality of the situation is revealed. Arsat's partner, a woman named Dialen, is lying there dying of a severe fever, and there's no doctor coming, there's no medicine. The jungle outside goes completely terrifyingly silent, almost like it's listening to them. And it's right in this terrible silence, watching the love of his life fade away, that Arsat finally cracks and confesses his dark backstory to Tuan. Section 3. The Escape and Sacrifice, a 19th century action sequence. All right, this is where we shift gears completely. We're leaving that quiet, moody lagoon behind and diving headfirst into a flashback that plays out like a high-octane action movie. Here is how it all goes down. Years ago, Arsat and his brother were these highly respected warriors. But Arsat fell deeply in love with Diamelin. The catch? She wasn't free to leave. She belonged to the household of the local ruler, serving his rather formidable wife, Inchimida. So under the cover of dusk and this massive, chaotic, torchlit fishing expedition, the brothers create a distraction. By midnight, Arsat, his brother, and Diamelin steal away into the darkness in a tiny canoe. They paddle for their lives all night long. But by dawn, they are totally exhausted, washed up on a beach, and the ruler's heavily armed warboat suddenly arrives. Just imagine their sheer desperation in this moment. Night, canoe, rice, one gun. That's literally all they have against an entire war party. The brother has one single rifle. It's just a breathless, exhausting nightmare of paddling all night, constantly checking over your shoulder, waiting for the absolute worst.
And right as the ruler's men close in, we hit the emotional core of this entire explainer. The brother turns to Arsat and says, "I'll hold them off." He tells Arsat to take Dailin, sprint through the forest, find a fisherman's hut, and steal another canoe. He promises to buy them time.
But this brings up a massive, lingering question. Did the brother actually believe he could hold off an entire warboat and somehow catch up with them later? Or was it a calculated lie? A lie just to get Arsat moving, fully knowing it was a suicide mission. It's such a brilliant psychological hook, and it keeps us completely tethered to the brutal reality of his sacrifice. Section 4, the burden of guilt, the ghosts that follow you. So let's see how this all builds to the tragic climax. Arsat runs. He gets Dailin through the forest, they overpower a fisherman, and they scramble into his canoe. But just as they paddle out into the open water, Arsat hears the gunshots. And then he hears his brother screaming his name twice. And Arsat, with the woman he loves right there in his boat and safety just a few strokes away, deliberately chooses not to turn around. He leaves his brother to die. Now, on paper, sure, Arsat won. He escaped, right? He got the girl. They built a whole life hidden away in the lagoon. But look at the reality of it. Now, years later, Dailin is dying, and Conrad heavily implies throughout the text that this fatal fever might not just be bad luck. It might actually be karmic payback. The ghost of the brother finally catching up to collect his due. Snapping back to the present tense, inside that stifling hut, Diamelen dies quietly by the fire, exactly as Arsat finishes telling his story. And what does Arsat do? He doesn't completely fall apart. Instead, he looks right at Tawan and resolves to finally leave the lagoon. He's going back to face the men who have been hunting him all these years. As Tawan paddles away in the morning light, he leaves Arsat completely alone with his crushing guilt, going back almost certainly to die. Section 5, a complete story recap, the inner layer for students. So remember that dual audience strategy we talked about earlier? We just went through the deep psychological framing for the general viewer. But what if you're a student who just needs the cold, hard facts for a comprehension exam? Well, this approach has you covered too. Here are the clear plot mechanics. Tuan finds Diamelen dying in the clearing. Arsat recounts loping with her, defying Inchi Mada and the ruler. The brother stays behind on the beach to fight. Arsat steals a canoe and ignores his dying brother's screams. Back in the present, Diamelen passes away. And finally, Arsat resolves to face his hunters while Tuan departs. Boom. Plain, simple, and perfectly structured for anyone needing to ace a test on Joseph Conrad.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to pull you right back into the heavy emotional weight of this masterpiece. Put yourself in that canoe for a second. What would you have done? If you had literally 10 seconds to choose between the absolute love of your life and the sibling who raised you and fought beside you, what do you actually do? Conrad absolutely refuses to give us a neat, tidy, moral answer. Instead, he just leaves us sitting there, in the boat, holding the paddle in our hands, forcing us to wonder.